So I have been procrastinating for over 2 hours to record this video, but I was determined to record it because I think it's important that it gets said. But I have to admit that I am a work in progress, just like you. So, with the Rich AF study group coming up in just over a week, I'm so excited for the women who are going to be involved with this year-long study group, including myself. My name is Michelle Talbert. I curate communities that are safe, centering Black women entrepreneurs 40 and better who are looking to move from confusion and isolation in this business journey to having community and clarity so that they can live the life and business of their dreams. That's what I do. But what I'm talking about today is our year-long study group for Amanda Francis's book. And if you've seen in the past few videos, I've been talking about this, which is uncommon for me. I am actually doing a lot of things that are outside of the realm of what I normally do when I'm curating community and hosting events and doing things, whether in person or virtually. And part of that is extremely intentional, and part of that is me challenging myself. It's intentional because I want to make sure that I reach as many people as possible, as many women as possible to go on this journey with us and to learn more about the principles, whatever you decide with regard to joining us on the journey. But also, it's about me pushing myself because if I say I'm going to be in a leadership role, then I think that there's some responsibility that you have there, which leads me to this conversation. So I've been procrastinating because for years I have been a heart centered entrepreneur. And what that has shown up as for me and many of the women who I've worked with and coached over the years is that we either undercharge or don't charge at all, or don't follow up, or don't send invoices, or let things slide, or give more than we should, allow for scope creep, all the things, especially when you are service-based business, right? Because that's the thing with product-based business owners. I think you actually have a better out. And I'll even talk about the space a little bit. You have a little bit of a better out because people can touch it, right? So this bottle of water, right, is 99 cents in Walmart or whatever. It is $10 if you go to a concert, right? So there is a lot to be said about perception, but it makes it easier when it's something tangible for most people. When you are a service-based business owner, right? And this comes up a lot. I coach women as a business advisor for the 1 Million Black Women program under Goldman Sachs. And a lot of my scholars who I work with, when they have this service-based piece, it's like, how do I price myself? Is it hourly? And you can get in the weeds, and there's loads of teachings and thoughts around how that looks, right? So for me, as a service-based business owner who puts services into the atmosphere and attracts women to work with them from a coaching perspective, especially, it can be really easy because I'm so passionate and also because it's a gift, right? That I can end up over delivering. Now, there's actually two issues with that. One is that number one, if you over deliver in a way that actually makes you feel you can start to feel a little bit of resentment and things like that. And you've done it to yourself, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. But also, the other piece of it is you can overwhelm the person that you're pouring all this passion onto, right? So, regardless of whether you charge for it or not, they just might not be ready. It's like taking a drink of water from a fire hose. Okay, so the reason I wanted to talk today is because I want to talk about, the Rich AF book study group that we're hosting for 2024. We're meeting once a month for 12 months to go through the concepts. There's 11 chapters in this book, and then we have a bonus meeting as well in that 12-month period beginning on January 4th, 2024. Right. So we're going all the way through to December. And the only first Thursday that we won't be meeting is July 4th, because that falls on a Thursday. So we'll meet July 11th. But we, the women who have already signed up, and I, as the curator of the space and sort of walking you through navigating the book and the principles, we have signed up. It's a year-long investment, right? So that in and of itself is something I've never done before. I've never done a year-long program. I've done quarterly at most. Okay. So the other piece is that I've hosted the book club, the Her Power Moves book club, since September 2021. And we've met almost every month for the past 2+ years now, having read over 6,700 pages, which equals about 10,000 minutes of books, right? We've read, I think, 23 books. And so I've never charged for that. I also, for almost every single Monday, beginning in like February of 2023 to now, to October, I, on every Monday, had open co-working work sprints, right? These were things that I believed were of value to my community, and I knew they were of value. However, I didn't charge for them because I felt like they were ancillary services to other work that I do. And maybe you fall into that category. So let's let that be the first thing we talk about. So undervaluing your work because it's not the main work, but it is still giving value, right? So there's something to be said about ensuring that you're in alignment. And so I talked a little bit about having a product and a product-based business, and people saying, okay, well, I know this cap costs this much, this label costs something, they have to pay somebody to print it, the bottle costs something, there's water, right? So you can conceptualize value when you can touch it. But when it's a service-based business, it's like, yeah, okay, well, I value your time, Michelle, but that being said, like, what does that really look like? How do you put a dollar amount on that price, et cetera, even though I am a lawyer and we often charge by the hour, right? But the real piece of it is that when I opened my space in January 2020, it was the first time that as an entrepreneur, I was no longer service-based without having a tangible aspect to it. So people walk in this door, they know that there's rent attached, they know that there's furniture in place, they know that the lights have to stay on, the internet needs to work, right? So conceptually, my mindset shifted about charging because I knew I had at least minimum obligations within the space related to the business, right? And other people's ideas about and opinions about what the space was and had value. Right. So that was the beginning of my own personal full disclosure journey to understanding about the importance of and being able to embody charging value, even though it's heart-centered work. So I say all of that just to kind of give a container in case you are a service-based business owner or service-based entrepreneur, to hopefully free you, but help you maybe pull in some concepts from having tangible assets or space or rent, and helping that sort of be a way for you to ensure that you show up and charge people what you're worth. Okay, so this one's going to be a little longer than usual because I want to cover a couple of things. The bottom line is that, and I won't bury the lead, I have actually set the pricing for this program at $20 a month if you pay month to month, or $120 one-time payment for the whole year. So that's like $10 a month, right? So we're not even talking about big dollars here, but energetically, I believe that there needs to be a dollar amount, and we'll talk about that in a second. The other part of it is that I also, right, because I'm getting some pushback, which I find interesting, and I think the more people who push back about the cost are more people who possibly need to be in the room, not from me having a savior complex, but for them hopefully getting some value for their own mindsets to shift. Right? That $10 or $20 a month feels expensive when you have an opportunity that can expand, but I understand, and I will talk about that as well. So, with that being said, right now, for a limited time, there is a 24-day trial, which obviously covers our very first meeting because that's going to be next Thursday, the 4th of January, depending on when you're watching this. I'm recording this on the 7th of December in 2023. Our first meeting is January 4th, 2024, right? So today I told the women in my community and people on the list, I said, look, 24 days trial. There's already modules in there. There's already some work in there that you can begin to do as we're preparing to meet on the 4th of January. And so that is already there. So that you know this now. So you can bounce away if you want to, but I really want to have this conversation about charging for heart-led work, right? And so I was listening to Amanda Francis is the author's name, right? The book is called Rich AF, and I have it on audio. I got it on audio first, and then of course I got the hard copies later. And I was listening to different pieces today. And there was a quote that she said, and I was like, wow, I plan to talk about this idea and concept of charging money for a money mindset course, right? And I was listening, and she said, if you have a big vision, it requires big resources. I have a huge vision for what the Her Power Moves community can be for women entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. And I have a really big vision about what our year together can look like. Because if you've watched yesterday's video, I talked about that concept of having vicinity. Sorry. Oh my gosh. It'll come back to me. The vicinity is the second word. I know the first word also starts with a V. I'm just tired because I procrastinated, right? But at any rate, by having that vicinity of being able to be in that same kind of vibrational vicinity, I knew I'd get it, the vibrational vicinity of us, everyone being in alignment and in this container where you are all striving to attain your goals financially and elevate the way you think about money and the way you think about yourself and your own worth and how you show up in the world. And I know that there is just going to be so much transformation that happens with this year-long study group, right? And so thinking from a heart-centered perspective, look, we all know things cost money, right? Whether you have space, work from home, it's impossible to live a life unless you're, as they used to call them, broke little friends, right? Children. It's impossible to live life as an adult and say, well, I don't need any resources whatsoever. It's you need resources, okay? So we have that as a baseline. So then a big vision requires big resources. And then she goes on with this quote that says, Jesus had a treasurer and Mother Teresa flew on private jets, right? So people like to say, oh, well, you know, Jesus walked and was pious and, you know, this whole broke mentality thing, right? But no, they had people pouring into that, right? So Martin Luther King Jr., same thing, right? A.G. Gaston owned hotels and buildings, and he is who I model myself after in terms of creating safe spaces for our community to be able to come in. So yeah, so Martin Luther King Jr. himself didn't have money, but A.J. Gaston had a bunch of money, and he was able to enable Martin Luther King Jr. to meet with his folks in a safe place. You see, so resources need to circulate and be around. If you choose poverty or you choose to not make money, but you want to make a big impact, the money has to come from somewhere. Bottom line. Okay. Right. Okay. So thinking through why you should charge in other reasons, right? So let's work through some of the resistance that people may have about charging, especially service-based business owners, right? Or people who are hosting or curating community. The question comes up, well, don't charge by the hour. It's hard for me to put an hourly dollar value on my work. It's only a 1 hour or 2 hour commitment. However, if you are really putting your heart into the work that you're doing, you're thinking about it in the shower. You're thinking about it when you're out on a walk. You're thinking about it overnight. You're thinking about it. It's embodied within you, and you're coming up with ideas and being creative. And first thing, if you're broke, You can't be creative, right? Because you're like, how do I pay the rent? When you think about how to pay the rent, that's, everything goes into that. How do you put energy then into this creative opportunity and creating this big vision and pulling out your big vision? And if you have to focus on resources that are so basic for your survival, right? So you owe it to the people you serve to charge so that your mind is not split. Let's talk about staff, right? You want to pay staff, right? You need to pay people, VAs, other people who need to help support you to bring this to fruition. I'm going to be talking about at the end of the year my biggest failure in 2023, and it had to do with me being too grateful. Stay tuned for that one, right? But you need staff, you need help, you need resources. And another thing is saying yes is expensive, right? And I heard Pastor Teresa say that, Torrey Roberts said this in an interview talking about the concept of saying yes to everything. As soon as you say yes to something, you have to say no to something else. It's just impossible to do both, right? It is impossible. Beyonce doesn't have 24 hours in a day. She probably has like 140 something hours in her day based on the staff around her. However, no one else can show up and be the mother to her children, the wife to her husband, or sing the songs on stage, right? So if she says yes to something, we know for a fact she has to do those three things, right? If you say yes to something, that means you have to say no to something else. And if that has to do with a trade off of saying yes because my heart is in it, but I'm not being paid well, and the thing that you either have to say no to that could possibly put more financial ease in your life, or, and this is what generally happens, you take on both. You try to do the heart center thing, which, as we already talked about, is not just about the time that you might be facing your client or front facing. This is permeates every part of you because it's part of your being that you're bringing out. And you take on the thing for the money, right? You take on the job. And that saps resources, even if you're not putting your heart and mind into it, it's still sapping resources. So you're still doing a disservice to not only yourself, but to the people who you serve. And then, most importantly, how's your attitude when you're doing something, but you feel like you're not being properly compensated for it? Do you feel a sense of resentment, anger, even if it's at yourself, right? Because sometimes we don't charge a client, and then scope creep happens. They start asking for stuff that wasn't even on the menu, right? So not only are they not paying, but then they're asking for more, and then we might even get pissed at them. It's not even their fault. It's ours. We control that. We control our time. We control what we put our energy into, and we control uh, the perception of value for the exchange of value that we give. Because that's all it is that we've attributed a dollar amount to bills. And we also need to attribute a dollar amount to the work that we do. And it's just an exchange, but they're both energy, right? It's just an exchange of value and energy. And when you can look at it like that, it seems fair. That's how things should happen. Right. And so years ago, back in 2008, maybe, I think it was like 2007, 2008, I was obsessed with podcasts. I used to listen to podcasts constantly back when we had iPods and you had to plug it in. And if you realized that everything didn't download overnight, when you got to the office or on your way to work, you would cry because it didn't download all your updated episodes. That was my life back in 2007, 2008. One of the first shows that I listened to about e-commerce and online business was called the Internet Business Marketing, Internet Business Mastery. And I used to listen to these two guys all the time. I didn't know, I was still practicing law. I didn't know exactly where I was going with it, but my heart felt led to tune into these two guys, right? It's 2007, 2008. They were based in California. And so they put out an offer, right? So they're doing all this free content, podcasting. It's 2023 now. So concepts are very different than they were 16, 17, 15 years ago, right? So then they put an offer out, pay for our mastermind. I'm sure it was affordable, but I had a certain type of yucky mindset around money, right? So they put the offer out. You can get sorry, I'm in my space and it looked like somebody was at my window saying something and we're closed. Anyway, at any rate, so they put the offer out and everything in me said, Michelle, sign up for this course, except the one part in me that was like, I can't afford it. Right. And so fast forward about 10 years, almost 10 years, there's a gentleman by the name of Pat Flynn. You may have heard of him. He has something called SPI, and he's a huge podcaster, right? And so Pat and I got to know each other. And he also talked about having been laid off from his architectural job at that time and signing up for the mastermind that these two guys talked about, right? So fast forward, he's making like six-figure months, posting it on his website, the whole nine. I was not. Full disclosure, have not yet made a six-figure month yet, right? Okay, so he's posting it, and I'm like, we were on the same path, the same journey, and given the same opportunity to invest in ourselves, because he attributes everything that he learned at the beginning to having signed up for this mastermind with these two guys, right? And so years later, I had him on my podcast, on the Her Power Hustle podcast. You can listen to the episode. It's a really good episode, actually. And so Pat and I were talking, and we talk about that, right? And one of the things that Pat said that I thought was so interesting, he said, these guys had given so much free content. I almost felt like I owed them. And I don't think a lot of us think about it that way either, right? There are loads of ways to give out free content. I'm doing it right now, right? There are loads of ways for you to give free content, but there does come a time where, number one, you should pay others for additional content for yourself, especially if you believe that there's a return on investment. And then the other piece of it is that you, as a person who puts out free content, should also be paid for people to have additional access to you, right? Because of course they didn't share everything that they shared for the fee on the podcast, right? Or else I would have had the six-figure months maybe, right? So that's something to think about. But the other part is, and I know that this comes up, especially for many of us who are in the Black community of entrepreneurs, Black women and women entrepreneurs, we have been burned by other coaches, programs, promises. In fact, I was talking to someone called me at 5:40 yesterday morning and was like, can I come in and meet? Well, she texted me at 5:40 in the morning. Do you have time today? I made time in my schedule for her to come in just to see what was going on. We hadn't touched base in a couple of years. She's back and wants to be really in the community and wanted my help on some business strategy stuff, right? No problem. I had no problem talking with her. And then she said, well, okay, so tell me how much it costs to hire you as a consultant. And so I told her the fee structure. I told her the way that I thought we could probably make the most transformation for her business goals that she had stated that I was sitting on my sofa in the middle of my workday talking to her about for free, right? And she was like, oh my God, that payment structure triggers me. And I had to pause for a second. And I just said, really? Tell me more about that. Yeah, no, I've hired other coaches, and it's a similar situation where they want you to pay and pay for their time and their services, and I just got no value out of it, or I was burned, or whatever that she was saying. But you probably can see that I've had it happen to me too, right? And I was like, I totally get that. I totally get that. But by the same token, the price is the price, right? The value is the value. And so there's a lot of pieces to the client's perspective, your perspective as a service provider, then your perspective as a client of someone else, your perspective of your own worth. And then here's one of the last things that I'll say. If you don't charge someone to show up for themselves, what are you saying about what you believe about them? Right? So, what I'm saying is by not charging people, you're doing a disservice to them because you're saying, oh, right? We talk about white saviors in our community, right? People who show up and are like, hey, I'm going to save the day for you. That's condescending. I mean, if you don't think that someone can pay to make their own life better and you allow them to live in that space, what kind of energy is that? We talked about that exchange of energy. You're starting off with this really weird energy, right? And there are people who will probably show up for everything you offer for free. Because tell me, I have people who have shown up for everything free that I've offered for the past, like anywhere from 5 to 9 years, and have never paid me. And I have no resentment about that. I'm also not going to let them get something for free that I charge for, right? It is up to the other person to make the investment in themselves. And we're talking in a business realm, we're talking in a money mindset realm. How do you get more money than you know what to do with if you're cheap? I mean, sometimes it just comes down to you're being cheap, right? And so I'm looking at my notes because, like I said, I'm still working through some of this stuff myself, right? I'm still in a space where I am, um, you know, figuring out how do I show up in a way that empowers my community and doesn't disempower them just because I feel heart led or because I know where they are in their journey and I've been there before. Right? And I've had people give me things for free and pour into me. And in my mind, I have a value, I have a running tally. And someone close to me was like, Michelle, I'm going to need you to clear that tally because it's blocking what you're able to accomplish. And I know that I'm going to get it on the back end. And I have taken care of that on the back end. Right? So, but that was an investment, that was a conscious decision. And so I say all of this to say that, a couple of things. One is that if you, especially if you are a service based business owner, it is imperative that if you are heart centered, service based business owner, that you charge. Right? We can have a conversation you can come in the squad when we talk about pricing in a couple of months in a master class, and we can talk about what the pricing actually looks like, but you need to charge. Pop, period. Right? You need to charge. We can talk about what the dollar amount is in a different discussion, but you have to charge. One, because it's the energetic opportunity for you to level up yourself. It is the opportunity for your client to invest in themselves. It is an opportunity for you both to be more vested in the exchange and have the right level of energy and not have resentment building up. And also, it's really important that people understand the concept of ROI, return on investment. If there is no investment made, how do you have a return? I mean, that is just against the whole principle of the thing. Have you ever thought about that? Because I know time is important, time has money attached to it, et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes people need to put the skin in the game so that they hold themselves accountable in a different kind of way. They show up in a different kind of way. And so I just wanted to come in and say to you to just breathe into it, make good decisions. Yes, the Rich AF study group for a year. Cost $120 if you pay all at once, $240 if you pay on a monthly basis. That's up to you to show up. I just know I'm not charging, right? So either I'll be sitting there with the people who have paid, or I'll be sitting there by myself. But no matter what, I'm doing the work, and I look forward to you joining me on that journey, right? I too am a work in progress. If I wasn't a work in progress, I wouldn't have been procrastinating and watering the plants over here. I'm like steaming them and cleaning them and all this stuff, right? To avoid coming in here and telling you the price is the price and I'm charging. And I hope you come, but it's not my job to force you to come. It's my job to show up, create the environment. Module one is already in the community, right? You can already go in there and get access to chapter one, start working through the prompts, and be ready to hit the ground running on Thursday, January 4th, 2024. I would love to hear from you in the comments on this one, right? This is so far outside of my own comfort zone. I feel completely prepared to go on this journey with you for the next year. However, the pricing piece, having this conversation and not keeping it internal, that is a stretch for me, and I'm pretty damn proud of myself. All right, my name is Michelle Talbert. I am the founder of Her Power Moves the Squad and the Rich AF Her Power Moves study group for 2024. And I cannot wait to meet you. Drop me a comment. Subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be putting out a lot more content that walks you through sort of the solopreneur entrepreneur journey. And I look forward to seeing you. You can head over to herpowermoves.com/richaf, and that'll put you right into the community. And if you choose not to pay, 24 days, you have 24 days to try us on and see if it makes sense for you. And I have done my part. The rest is up to you. Take care. I'll see you soon. And as our motto says, you've got squad and we all win.